exploiting women's pain and suffering. Whenever leaders in the Seventh-day Adventist Church talk about abortion, almost always, 100% of the time, they will say that abortion is to save a mother's physical life that is threatened. The Adventist Church, however, supports abortion for 5 reasons. A mother's physical life is in danger if the father is a criminal, rape and incest, if the child is not perfect, if it's handicapped or disabled with defects, and for a mother's, quote, health. When asked about abortion, leaders are notorious. They are notorious for citing the mother's life clause right here, but they never ever cite the mother's health clause right here. And why is that? Why do they always avoid it? The reason is because the mother's health clause is the exact same phrase used in the Supreme Court decisions Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton to justify abortion on demand all the way until birth, because health is defined as mental health, emotional health, social health, or anything that affects a woman's, quote, well-being. Leaders know this, so they always avoid explaining the mother's health clause. Abortion advocates have, for many years, used a psychological trick by constantly talking about and drawing attention to grave life and death emergency situations where women die without proper medical care. They do this in order to soften the audience, remove resistance, and elicit sympathy for a dying woman. And once the people are confused about mother's life and mother's health, and they agree, oh, we need to save a mother's life, they will then slip in that phrase, mother's health, hoping that you won't notice or ask what that means. Dr. Gerald Winslow is a professor of religion at Loma University, and recently Dr. Winslow gave a presentation on abortion within the Adventist Church, and it was recorded and posted to the public for the whole world to see, and feedback was invited, so we are going to respond in this video. According to a research paper presented at the meeting of the Society for the Scientific Study of Religion, it was Winslow who was the dominant figure in the abortion debate in order to shape the church's position, and it was Winslow who was given the task of writing the initial draft of the church's pro-abortion position. So of all people in the Adventist Church, Dr. Winslow knows this topic very well, probably better than most other people in the church. In my next video, I will go through and address his main arguments, but in this video, let's focus on just one important point. Near the end, at about 42 minutes into his presentation, Dr. Winslow then says he wants to get personal by telling the stories of 2 pregnant mothers who had a very rare condition called placenta praevia, where the placenta covers the opening to the cervix, which, if not resolved, may cause severe bleeding. Only about 10% of actual cases develop into full placenta praevia. This is very rare, worldwide around 5 per 1,000 pregnancies. If management does not succeed and there is heavy bleeding, the only option is to terminate the pregnancy by delivering the child through a cesarean. Depending on the age of gestation, sometimes the baby will live and sometimes it will not. But if you do not intervene, then both the mother and the child will die. Let's listen.
I have carried the beeper and done consultations in our own hospital here, and I've been called out in the middle of the night for cases like this. And just imagine this scene: a mother of 3 with her husband who is dying by bleeding to death with placenta praevia. That is, those of you who know this know what I'm talking about. She's getting a unit of blood every hour or 2, and we're losing the battle. And the only way to save her is going to be to remove that uterus. They want that baby. They don't want an abortion, but they want the mother in that house. So I'm there. This is an unhappy moment. And the decision is made. She will go ahead and end the pregnancy and the life of her uterus as well, and save her own life. That was one night. Next night, about 2 in the morning, I got another call. It was my week to be on. Different scene. About a 20-year-old Hispanic young woman with her husband. First pregnancy, prima gravida, I think they say. Okay. She really wants this pregnancy. She's never been pregnant before. She has the same condition. The physician looking after her is the same one from the previous night, and she said, I've been here 11 years, and I've never seen this before, and now I have 2 cases 2 nights in a row. Same decision was finally made.
Dr. Winslow tells the story that he was called in to consult on these cases, and the decision was made to terminate the pregnancy. Now, as he finishes telling the story, listen very carefully to his comments.
Do you think anybody could walk out of that with a dry eye? I can hardly talk about it now, many years later. These are agonizing decisions, and we try to make them carefully. And we often get criticized for them anyway. But we do the best we can under what is often a tragic situation.
That is amazing, just amazing. Whenever leaders in the Adventist church talk about abortion, they always, 100% of the time, choose the most rare and the most extreme life and death emergency situations when a mother's physical life is at stake, and they completely avoid the mother's health clause. They always avoid that and consistently focus on the extreme life and death situations. Par for the course, Dr. Winslow does just that, and then after reminding the audience just how emotional this can be, he says this.
These are agonizing decisions, and we try to make them carefully. And we often get criticized for them anyway.
He says they are agonizing decisions, but they often get criticized for them anyway. Do you see what he just did? It was very clever, very slick. Now stop and think that through. Of all the years that he has been in this work, he shares extremely rare life and death cases, and he even cites the physician who agrees that this is extremely rare and that these pregnancies were ended in order to save the physical life of the mother. He then says he can barely talk about this without getting emotional and claims that this is what they often get criticized for. Question for you watching this video. Have you ever in your life heard of any doctors being criticized because after doing everything possible to save the pregnancy, they had to deliver the baby early in order to save the mother's physical life? I would like Dr. Winslow to please provide evidence of being criticized often for cases of saving a mother's physical life.
These are agonizing decisions, and we try to make them carefully. And we often get criticized for them anyway.
That is very interesting because my wife is a practicing licensed OB/GYN physician at an Adventist hospital who incidentally just had a placenta praevia patient just a few days ago who needed a blood donor, so I personally just a few days ago donated blood for that patient. However, after hearing Winslow's remark, I went to the hospital and I asked several of the OB/GYN physicians there if they were ever criticized for anything like this, and they looked at me like I was asking an odd question. They said, no, of course not. I said placenta praevia, ectopic, preeclampsia, any case where the mother would die without intervention. Have you ever been criticized? And the answer was a unanimous no, never. Have you ever heard of any physician anywhere being criticized? The answer again, no, never. This is a big problem because it's contrary to Winslow's statements. It's also contrary to logic and reason. Are we supposed to now believe that though doctors are never criticized, oh, the chaplain, he's the one who is often criticized? Are we supposed to believe that Winslow lives and works in an area of the world where the chaplain gets blamed for life and death emergency situations? Have you ever even heard of such a thing? Now, we do not know, I want to make this very clear, we do not know what is inside Winslow's heart, but we do know what he said because he speaks English, and English words have meanings which can be found in any dictionary. We know that this man has been more involved in keeping abortion inside our church than almost anyone else. We know that this man has defended abortion for almost 40 years, and we know this because not only does he admit this out of his own mouth, but his articles were published right here in the Adventist Review, in Ministry Magazine, Liberty, all of our official publications. It is my personal opinion that Dr. Winslow is using the most rare extreme cases and using strong emotional language for the purpose of softening up his audience and lowering any resistance. Then he turns around and he frames himself as the victim who often gets criticized. This has the effect of evoking sympathy and support because he has painted himself as a kind, compassionate, caring man trying to help a woman who is dying. People in the Adventist church, like Dr. Winslow, understand that most Adventists tend to be honest, trusting people that are oblivious to the use or abuse of language like mother's health in order to justify abortion. So they use extreme cases like some woman who is bleeding to death so that you feel like the bad guy if you so much as even ask any questions. This is a classic bait and switch. It's a total manipulation tactic. Dr. Winslow openly admitted that these women did not. Did you hear what he said? They did not want to lose their baby.
And the only way to save her is going to be to remove that uterus. They want that baby. They don't want an abortion. She really wants this pregnancy.
these women are bleeding to death and do not want to lose their baby, but he uses their suffering and pain to paint himself as the victim for being criticized for abortions that are not to save a life. Dr. Winslow, like other Adventist leaders, is exploiting a woman's pain and suffering as a cover for other types of abortions. He admitted that these women did not want to end their pregnancy. It was unintentional, but he uses their story in order to justify abortions that are deliberate and intentional. Let me ask you a thought question. How do you think those women would feel if they knew that Dr. Winslow would use their pain and their misery to cover for deliberately killing children in cases where the mother is okay? Let me ask you, how would you feel if you were in a trying and difficult or painful situation and you confided in someone, you trusted someone, and they turned around and used your pain and suffering to manipulate people to justify hurting children? You think that would never happen? Think again, because it's happening right in front of your eyes. Leaders in the Adventist church have been doing this for over 49 years. They are playing you like a fiddle. The next time that anyone in the Adventist church, especially a church leader, pulls this dishonest and disgraceful stunt on you by claiming a mother's life, you immediately turn the table on them and ask them why they are exploiting a woman's pain and suffering. Ask them to explain the mother's health clause. Why are they using a woman who is bleeding to death and dying to justify deliberately killing children? And if you think this is the only problem with Winslow's presentation, then be sure to subscribe, because part 2 is coming up next.